Checking Facebook. Again, we are live on Facebook, Biba. Live on Facebook. Again. No, 22 much. There we go. Okay, put Fin. All right. Half a day total Samzu Bueno Huzung Estigi un nuevo na episode Fanatsu. Wahui host Mizu para estina episode. Nan si Michael Luhan Bavakwa. And Hungan Maguf zu Pagus Bula Tauta Guinigi Holami Zoom. Oftentimes it's just me and one other person in the Zoom. Lo Guaha Quattro Otro Tauta Guini. There's 4 other people here in the Zoom room, and they are eager to talk to you about a wonderful Chamorro language resource. So the Chamorro language, however you want to, whatever imagery, whatever words, whatever metaphor you want to use to talk about it, it's definitely in trouble. Some people say the Chamorro language is dying. Some people say that the Chamorro language is declining. Some people say that it's endangered. Some people say the Chamorro language is getting quieter. One of my friends who is from another indigenous group whose language was actually lost, where there's no more speakers for their language group. He says that they like to use the term sleeping. He says that their language is sleeping and their people are trying to wake it up again in their work, trying to bring it back. And so for us, you could say that esta gof matuhuk ifinot samoro. Esta kumeke maigo ifinot samoro. It's not este kalang bulala tsubuente por este tuban americano, este aguardiente americano. The Chamorro language is already kind of tipsy on all this American, but we can get it going. We can get it going. We can get it going again. But what we need, though, is we need more people speaking it. We need more people creating resources to help others, and we need more support. So those that want to learn it, especially those who are adults, those people who, who may be the only Chamorro in their zip code that they know of. And there may not be any Chamorro food truck within 100 miles of them. There may not be a Guam club within 200 miles of them. There may not be a half-a-day golf club tournament within 1,000 miles of them. And they need support. They need resources. And it is with this in mind that I'm very excited to share with all of you the website Sakman Ifinota. And I'm excited to share with you to invite onto the podcast here today the founder of the website, Benny Anderson, and then 3 of the people who will be writing for the website and who have also written for the website in the past. And before we get to Benny, who's going to talk to us about why he started this, let me just share a little bit about this website. And so Isakman Ifinota means, of course, the vessel of our language, the canoe of our language. And so on it, the website isakman.com, although estakalang bibihudzu pues zahusumangan www.isakman.com. Zakade leku www. My kids go, safon uusa www. Tadzo muusa no esta ti guailadziano ti debidu usa no. My kids are always like, man, and I'm like, well, malago tumusas binaklaro na. It's important. Make clear it's a website. The address, www.isakman.com. Articles of history, articles about culture, articles about Pokemon. Very few of you expected that I was going to say articles about Pokemon, and that's what's amazing about this website, is that for all of the things that Chamorros are into nowadays, all of the things that Chamorro speakers and learners are into nowadays, you may find it on this website. You may, for example, you may have never imagined. Like I think back, I never got to know my great-grandfather, Situn Gedzetmo Sablan Flores. He was a well-known lancero from the village of Talafofo. I bet my Situn Etmo, I bet he never imagined that there would ever be a review of a famous Cantonese pop song called Pursuit by the Cantonese singer Leslie Chung in the Chamorro language. But his great great granddaughter wrote that review of that song in the Chamorro language. This is what's great about Sakman, is that people bring whatever interests them, whether it's from our history, whether it's from our present, and they write about it in the Chamorro language and they post it. And this is what's amazing about what Benny Anderson here has created, a Sakman, a vessel in which sort of all of the things that the Chamorro people that we have with us today, we can all pile it into this canoe together. And so Benny, Hafade, por favor, tell us all sort of how did this journey get started?
Oh, thank you, Sanat, for inviting us here. Um, just like probably a lot of us around when the pandemic started, we all went on to Zoom for different things, learning, meeting up with friends, and Senor started a Chamorro language class, and so we were invited by our nephew to join, and we started joining it regularly, and that's probably my reconnection back to the language. As I was learning it, I wanted to kick it up a notch, and I started to look for books, Chamorro books to read, and I did a lot of research on second language learning. And so I was Googling around. I started buying books on Guampedia and UOG Press. I even looked on Amazon. And so, I was getting some of those books, but then as I was going through them, I wanted more. And so as I started to study about second language learning, I realized like we needed, second language learners need a lot of content to practice and learn. And so I was uh, not finding as much online and even on books. And so I started to think about um, how can we create more? And then a lot of the books were expensive, and so it made me think about free. Like how do we get um, unlimited Chamorro language content for learners that's accessible, like i.e. free or cheap. And so then I kept coming back to a blog, thinking about it. There were several evolutions of the idea, like as a newspaper or music lyrics site, all kinds of things. And I got some advice, including from Senor about how to go about this. And around uh, 2021, I started to kind of organize the idea and get some people together to get this going. And we released it in time for Mes Chamorro 2022. And so we got a lot of the class helped, the online class helped, where it was a it was a tool for practicing as we're going through the class. And so that helped build up a lot of the content on the site. And now we're just trying to keep it going. I keep thinking of something like a grassroots kind of community of writers. And so hopefully organically the writing just continues, and then we keep encouraging the next group of new learners to come and visit and read and learn and then hopefully contribute. And so we hope that there's a point where this has a life of its own and starts evolving and improving. I keep looking and thinking about more projects to add more content types. And so that we're getting organized and planning those things. And so lots of things to come, and hopefully 2024 is gonna introduce more variety and more depth to the project.
Oh, Sidus Masi. I think again, the mention of, it's it's important that there's resources out there, that have a cost behind them because, there's it takes time and effort to create them, but it's always important that there be community resources too and community spaces as well. And so that's one thing that I really like about, Isakman is that for people who you know, who it when you said that it started off as like a blog, I love that idea, and it's just kind of a, because I remember when we were first talking about this idea, I was kind of like, I remembered the early days of Guam and Chamorro internet, things like Guam Chat, the website People from Guam, these early online Guam and Chamorro spaces. And what was weird is I remember going into those spaces, and because for me, I was first starting to learn Chamorro, and I thought these must be great places where I can practice my Chamorro. And then most people on there didn't want to practice, didn't know Chamorro, or didn't want to try to practice Chamorro. And so when you were first talking about that, I was like, oh, that's, yeah. If only we had been able to start harnessing the internet back then, you know, the dividends that it would have paid today, you know, then I bet we would have armies of Manhoban who would be texting fluently in Chamorro right now. They'd be texting circles around Chat GPT, and oh my goodness. But instead what we have is, somebody texts SYM and it becomes a 30-minute conversation. What is this SYM? What is this? Is it wait, oh, does SYM mean so you're mad? No, it means Sidus Masi. Oh. And then somebody texts you SM and you're like, is that Sina Maasi? But I love it when somebody texts TG, Tadzagwa. And I'm like, and I'm like, I know that you mean Tadzagwa, but I'm almost certain that very few people would assume that TG means Tadzagwa. But yeah, so I really like that, because a lot of times there's this emphasis that whatever we do, because I remember when I first started getting into language revitalization conversations, people were like always talking about whatever is big and new, let's do it. So Rosetta Stone was big and new, and people said we need a Chamorro Rosetta Stone. And it's like, you could do that, but you could also do simpler things, cheaper things. You don't always need to do the biggest and the shiniest thing and the newest thing. That's not always the best thing. There's other humbler things that you can do, and sometimes those are actually the better things. So that's what I like about sort of the what you've created. And I do want to highlight, because you mentioned that it's not just articles, but that there's some other things there too. And so I want to show everyone there is a Chamorro Wordle page. And man, I'm pretty good at the English Wordle. Tigof Maulikzu. Tigof Maulikzu Humagandu Wordle Gifinot Chamorro. I am not too good at the Chamorro Wordle page. I
Yeah,
am
kudos
pretty
to my nephew Victor Sangil. He's he this was a side project of his, and yeah, we're really proud of it. So, thank you, Victor.
No. Me and my two older kids, Mine, we would do the English Wordle on New York Times together. We tried the Chamorro Wordle. We were we were ready to flee to Rhoda, man. We were like, oh my goodness, this is the end. We were ready to turn our Chamorro cards in and just give up, because we can't beat this. But this is what's great, is that on this site there's community articles, things that people submit, but you've also encouraged your nephew, who works programming and doing some stuff like that, to create simple word games as well, like Wordle, and then there's also some like word searches and some
Yeah.
puzzle games, and
Mhm.
that's great. Those are the types of things that can really help encourage people to take Chamorro as a real language, right? To take it as a real language, not just like this fake language that that where no one knows how to spell anything and stuff like that. It's take it as like a real language that we should be trying to preserve and keep alive. And so I want to give a chance, Benny, for you to introduce some of the people here that have joined us.
Yes.
Um, and so let's hold on, let's open this up so we can see all of them. And so perhaps Buente si Senora Rose, Finetna. So Benny, go ahead and introduce.
So the panel we have today includes new writers, and then and in addition to Rose, who's helped post several articles around, who's also went through a language learning journey as well. And so Rose, if you want to kind of introduce yourself and maybe give a little hint of some of the experience you had with the Sakman.
Um, I'm Rose Francis Brown, familian. Charod on my mom's Taitano sign, and Francis does not have a nickname. So it's just familiar Francis. I grew up in my teen. And I also was invited to join a Chamorro learning class. And I was very interested because I've been wanting to write. And I was finding it difficult to find, books, resources, that kind of stuff. So that really helped. When Sakman came around, I realized that it was an open and diverse forum, I guess I want to call it. And I was interested because it wasn't placing a lot of rules and regulations, especially when you're learning the orthography and how to spell and use, all the symbols and pronouns and the fan and the man and all that kind of stuff. So that was my interest. I wrote one article, and then in my study group, we took 4 of the major Catholic novenas and made them fit the orthography, spelling, and stuff like that. So since I was part of that, I sent a bunch to Benny and he put it out there because people might want to say the Novena Niño or the Santa Maria and Carmela Novena. So that's what led me actually to Sakman. Plus, I knew Benny personally and just wanted to support his venture. And I do have some articles to contribute, but it's a bit slow. That's it.
Thank you, Rose. And then Alex also starting to write and did contribute the Pokemon, that super awesome Pokemon article. So Alex, you want to introduce yourself?
Um, yeah, my name is Alex. I'm originally born and raised in Guam. I'm trained as a scientist and I do love Pokemon, as most of my close friends would know.
Okay, and
And I
then
just got introduced to
oh,
Sakman very recently, so I'm just still in the process of learning and exploring different things about the site.
cool. Thank you, Alex. And then the dilemma, you want to give a little? You're also starting to learn and reconnect and interested in contributing.
Yes, I took a little bit of Sunyot's class last year, but I somehow got lost. And I'm back, and I'm back for a deeper devotion to learning and writing our language, and also for two other reasons. I'm homeschooling my first grader, and I wanted to teach her our language, and she started already. And I wanted to share the journey of a mom blog, and with instead of starting a brand new one, just go ahead and join someone that it's already there, it's established, and just provide the content and the information, and so that maybe other mothers can, or fathers can have that and learn and know that journey, how the child will learn their own language as well. And she's enjoying it. So I wanted to share that. We already started. And I also wanted to share some stories of the war. My dad is a war survivor. He's still alive, though he is elderly, sickly. But I wanted to share his story and I didn't want it to die. I understand our language fluently, but I'm very crooked and speaking it, but I want to fluently speak it. Um, and I know very little to read. I can read it, but I'm very slow. I want to read it fluently as well, and not just writing it, but my parents tried their very best to teach me, but my mom was on top of speaking the language to me directly. And every time I didn't know what it meant, I would have to ask her in order for me to understand what she's saying. So I have to respond. When I respond in English and Chamorro. She would not give me a definition. I have to figure it out. That's how strict she was with me learning the language. So that's how I learned to understand it fluently, but to speak it, she'll start laughing at me or she'll get mad. But she had passed. And that's one of the reasons why I want to teach my daughter, because my parents are not going to be there. My mom's not here to teach. So I need to learn it completely, and teach her, just maybe not the same, but I need to teach my child our language and our culture, and that's what we're doing. And this is why I'm here, to inspire others, and to bring it down to the next generation and pass it on. And I have always wanted to write, so I'm here. I'm a new editor for another project, but I want to put it as part of my language and my learning journey, and increasing my knowledge for and writing and speaking for our language. So that this is why I'm here, and I want to share with others.
Oh,
Thank you for making me come on board too.
oh, Sidus Masi no Hamzu todos. And Benny, man, hutungunay na megay tsotso, paruun tutuhon esti, za paruun maneja motna esti. I know it's a lot of work to, keep stuff like this going, and always when to continually try to inspire people and encourage people. And so, but I'm glad that you've kept it going for 2 years, going on into, this 2024 now. But Vadalama, what you were talking about there in terms of, your mother, correcting you, or differences in language and stuff like that. That's one of the things that I think Sakman, it's important. It's important, right? Because what's tricky about language, right, is that there's everyone kind of feels like there's right ways and wrong ways to say things. But people also feel that there's lots of different ways to say things. And so there's issues in there, right? Because there's ways that people get used to hearing things, and then there's ways that you can say things which are not wrong, but it's just not the way that people have said it before. And so that's one thing that new learners of Chamorro find when they encounter first language speakers or people who have been speaking it their whole lives, is that when you're starting to learn the language and trying to learn it, you're going to try to say things, and it may not be the way that your parents said it or your grandparents said it, and they may tell you it's wrong. and sometimes it might be wrong, it might be incorrect, but sometimes it might just be different. And it's tough navigating that. It's tough figuring that out. But one thing that I like about Sakman, though, is that Sakman is not a place for stuck-up Chamorros. To be very honest, there are other websites which are for stuck-up Chamorros. And I think we know that there are plenty of Chamorros out there who kind of feel that the way that they spell is the way that everyone else should spell, or the way they say it is the only real way, or you should follow me and not anyone else, or only look at my website and not blah, 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 stuff like that. But what I love about Sakman, though, is that anybody, from whether you are a Chamorro who is living on the island of Pagan, whether you are a Chamorro who is living on Cocos Island, whether you are a Chamorro who's living on the tip of Florida, whether you are a Chamorro who is camping out in the Red Sea in the Middle East, wherever you are, as long as you speak Chamorro, and as long as you can make yourself clear in Chamorro, and as long as you're trying, it doesn't matter how you spell, as long as you can do your best to communicate, then put your thoughts, put your stories, put your stuff on Sakman. And what Benny has started doing is, of course, to offer weekly meetings as well for new writers, where people can come together and then share and talk, and even have others look at what they've written to get feedback and corrections or edits if they'd like. But when you look at Sakman, you will find a diversity of Chamorro voices. Even just looking here, you'll find the pieces like that I submit regularly for the Guam Museum, like the most recent one, which talks about the life under Japanese occupation in Guam, sort of how Chamorros struggled under Japanese occupation. As Alex was talking about, si Professor Pugwa instead of Professor Oak, or instead of if you're familiar with Pokemon, then they often had tree names, the professors in Pokemon. And so he's Professor Pugwa, and so he was in his post, he was talking about the first 3 Pokemon. And Alex, for a long time, has been trying to, connect the Chamorro language to things that he has been passionate about for the longest time, things from video games, things from that culture that he's always enjoyed. And then as he's learned Chamorro, he's tried to find ways to connect them. Benny is always posting different reflections, different resources, different stories. My partner, Igwenaizaku Desiree Nai, she posts about raising her new babies, our babies, but our babies, but they're very attached to her. I don't know why. It might have to do with the susu, from what I hear. I don't know. They go goo for the susu or something like that. But she's also taking omelet classes. And so she posts and writes about taking and learning traditional medicine, right? Oh, Hongan, I'm just teasing. I'm just joking. I know. And then Akli'i, my boy, he writes about video games. So this is his review about Fallout 4, which he was playing recently on Xbox. And so, but then going back, you'll find all sorts of different things in which people submit things that interest them, Hold on, let me share some more pieces. Oh, Aziz Sabeti, he submitted something with a song that he wrote for his child, Senora Chris Carbozito Batea, who has been attending the Zoom Chamorro classes for a while. She's written a few pieces, and I hope that she also continues to submit, because she grew up speaking Chamorro, and she's kind of rediscovered her voice in the Chamorro language, along with her family. Smai always, and then my oldest child, Smai, is always writing about music, writing music reviews in Chamorro. CJ Pascual, a chanter and a poet, he puts posts about chants, his ancient style chants that he writes. Oh, I miss Senora Lupe, Pangolinan Szymanski. She used to come to my Chamorro classes. And so she wrote about sort of the experience of her family during World War II. Clarissa Mingiola, who, is a poet, lives out in California. She wrote about a poem that she made for her kids, and also a video that she made. And so all sorts of things. But one of the things, because there are official spelling systems in the CNMI and in Guam, but for Isakman, you don't have to spell any particular way. You're not required to conform to a spelling system. And if you submit it, it's not like, see Benny Anderson over there, he's gonna take a blessed belt and he's gonna smack you with it and say, Munga malefa, debedu na capitalisa enotse. Make sure you capitalize. And or he's not gonna say it's not ORU, it's ORRO9. He's not gonna get on your case about those things. We know why the spelling is important, right? In the long term. We know why having standardized spelling is important in the long term, but at least, but Benny, I want to hear your thoughts though about why you feel it's more important now though to have an open community space where people can submit regardless of how they spell in Chamorro.
Yeah, I've been thinking of the community aspect of it, and then the learners. So I'm hoping when second language learners for Chamorro come to use Sakman as a tool for reading and then hopefully writing, we're at the beginning stages. We're at the early stages of our writing. And so I feel like if we can have less barriers to practice, we're also putting ourselves out there. I'm hoping that that's a way to inspire more and encourage more learning and practicing of Chamorro. And then it just opens up creativity as well. And so the more we need more content. And I'm just trying to figure out ways to not block people from contributing, feeling that they're part of the community and being able to post and feel like they're part of this project where we have to do it ourselves. We have to figure out ways to learn quickly and get better and use the language. And so I didn't want to block anyone. And I feel like it'll build, hopefully it builds a sense of community where everyone's voice is first class.
Biba. No, Sidus Masi. Sidus Masi. And I do want to ask a question to Senora Rose, because she was on one of my favorite Fanatso episodes in which she talked about how she took on the late great Joe Murphy in the Guam Daily News back in the day. And I'm just teasing that
No, that's funny.
so Senora Rose, as a young high school student attending Academy of Our Lady of Guam, after Joe Murphy, who was at the Pacific Daily News at that time, had written in his editorial basically that he felt that Chamorro families who were teaching their children to speak their native language were doing a disservice to their kids, because it was going to harm their ability to assimilate, to become Americans. That he put this in, and this was in the 60s. And so Senora Rose, as a young woman, with the help of, I believe you said that one of your aunts, Maria Lane was one of your aunts that helped, and then they helped you compose a letter in which you responded. And it was a very for that time, it was a very radical critique, because it was basically saying that Chamorros could speak their language and should speak their language if they wanted to. And it doesn't affect if they're American or not, and that young people should be speaking Chamorro, and that you know, I think you even said something like if what's it called? If speaking Chamorro makes us less American, then you should criticize young people who listen to like rock and roll that it makes them less American too.
Yeah,
It-
it was pretty radical, but at that time, between junior high and high school, my grandmother came to live with us, and she doesn't speak English. And so there always seemed to be a conflict because she could only speak Chamorro. So we learned it, we picked it up, and it was like, don't listen to Nana because you're not supposed to, you know, learn Chamorro, focus on your English. Well, by then we were junior high. And so Murphy came out and literally said, you're doing a disservice to your children. They're not going to survive in America. And Chamorro should be shelved, like put it in a bookshelf or leave it at the museum. And so I wrote this letter, and it started out angry. And so then, with the help of my aunt, she mellowed it down and made me focus on the point that you can't get rid of our language. It's the only thing left in our culture, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, Miguel found that article somehow. That was in 67, I think, years ago.
It's
But
oh,
yeah,
used to have my
I was
students
pretty
read that. I used to have my students read that article and when I taught at UOG, because it was a very important moment in
You know,
Chamorro
somebody told me that.
responding. Mhm.
Somebody told me that some of the Chamorro classes knew my letter. And I'm like, really? Where's the copyright, right? But no. And then my mother became one of the early pioneers when the university first started the Chamorro to teach teachers how to teach Chamorro language, whatever. And when I moved back to Guam in the 80s, she would go around singing the alphabet, the che, chi, whatever. And I feel really bad because we didn't pay attention. And so later, you know, in life, I'm like, I need to get back to Chamorro. And I just want to say that the Vidal, how do I say your name?
The E is silent, Vidalma.
Vidalma. I
Yes.
really want to encourage you. And I think Sakman would be a good forum for your children's section, I guess I want to call it. Because I have stuff I can contribute. I can email you stuff for children's stuff. So
Okay, thank you.
take it on. You'll
Just
get a lot of
Lassie.
support.
Biba.
I
Biba.
appreciate that.
Again.
So, Michael, would I be considered a first or a second language?
Again, you are in a tough place because you definitely heard a lot of Chamorro growing up, but it was stressed, right? It was de-emphasized. You were pressured to not actively use it, right? So that's why if So it's tough to classify, because if you had been empowered, then you would absolutely be a comfortable first language Chamorro speaker. But instead, you were disempowered and it was mixed. And so now, as you're returning to it, you probably find it's difficult to access the memories at times, and it doesn't come as easily, and part of that is it's just because it's there, but it's just harder in time. And so, but that's why it's good that you're learning, and I'm glad that Dr. Sauter was having her language nest and working with all of you across Zoom, because I for me, and that's why Benny and the Sakman is so important, is that the language used to be passed on through what we would call natural means, right? Is that a child isn't born, and then younger people may be familiar with like a movie like that Boss Baby, where babies get to wear suits and choose things and they're very mature and stuff like that. Younger people listening will know what Boss Baby is. But in truth, you don't get to choose your language. You don't get a lot of choices about your identity and what's given to you. It happens because of what's around you. And so the ways that people used to get the Chamorro language is that you just grow up in a house and in a family where everyone speaks Chamorro. And so there's no question. Even when you might learn Spanish too, you might learn English too, you also speak Chamorro. But then what happened is that those families stopped passing on Chamorro to the kids, right? The parents spoke it to each other, but then they stopped speaking it to the kids. And so maybe only the grandparents would speak it to the grandkids and not the parents to the kids. Or only a great grandparent would speak it, or one grandparent would speak it to the kids, and everyone else spoke English to the kids. And so then you get kids where they're not hearing the language in the natural way. So that's what happens then, is you get what linguists identify in the 60s and 70s, where Chamorro kids are speaking Chamorro, but it's different. It's like, because they're not learning it in a full way because the parents are keeping it from them, but they're still hearing it. But it's like Dr. Judy Flores once called it the half-half generation, where they're like because they're hearing plenty of Chamorro, but they're also being told, like you were, Senora, you're not supposed to speak Chamorro. So you go to school and you're not supposed to speak Chamorro, but you're also speaking Chamorro to your friends. And so Chamorro begins the process of becoming what we think of today as like chod, where it's more slangy, it's more informal, and it's more fun, because it's not like it's not a full world, it's like half of a world. And then it becomes a quarter of a world and stuff like that. So Sakman, and even the language nest that Dr. Sauter created, or even my Zoom classes, what we have to do are help people find new and different ways of getting the language, because the old natural ways, your family, they broke down. They stopped passing on the language. And so you have to find other forms of community to do it. And it's harder. It's so much easier if just you've got Chamorro speakers in your family, just speak Chamorro to the kids. But in the absence of that, we do the hard work of creating spaces like this, and then we plant the seeds. And we wish it was like back in the day, where Chamorros would say, man, you just drop the coconut and then like go back a year or two later and, hey, está listo. Kelegwen for everyone. Bocadzu para todo. It's not like that anymore. But we plant the seeds and we do the work. Oye, dispensa mega cuentoso. I want to give Alex, I want to give you a chance though, because you Sidus Masi for joining Sakman. And so what is inspiring you to sort of write about Pokemon in Chamorro? I love it, but I want to hear more from you about why you are inspired to do that.
Well, as I indicated previously, it is something that I'm very familiar with. And at times I also kind of feel that there's a lot of different words that we have already that we could be exploring and kind of making into new thought processes, and even in just like some very simple terms. Like maybe there's a word back in the day that means something like seed. Like, seed is a common word, but you don't hear people talking about it like, very much right now. And it just kind of is like a exercise for me to kind of like expand like beyond what people typically think to talk about, like, in the language. And it's also just really thinking like, other opportunities to try and make it more of a language for the future. Because, people are contemporary, and like in another generation or so, we're not going to have, survivors from World War II or from any of these other historical times. So it's kind of like, well, why can't we just like, seize the future ourselves and just kind of dare to do things maybe a little bit differently? Like maybe like, thousands of years ago when our ancestors, went out into the ocean in Sakman or any other kind of like, boats or whatever they decided to ride upon. It just kind of like, venture to see like where they would end up. Because it's like there are lots of things that I'm sure people would really want to talk about, but sometimes there's like a hesitation to try and think of like, taking the next step beyond like, what and really going into the realm of, well, what can be possible? Like, a couple years ago, I didn't even know that there was a contemporary word for describing snow in Chamorro, or I didn't know that there was a word to describe marijuana in Chamorro either. And it's like you don't find like some of these things like in dictionaries or any of like the official resources where they're, things are taught a certain way. But even like in the education system, like other sections, you have like, changes in the system. Like people learn lots of new things. Like words are constantly being created and fall out of out of flavor. Like 100 years ago, you wouldn't even had like, something like the word laser beam exists. And then if you try to say what it was back then, is like, well, how do you describe it? Well, somebody had to come up with it. Somebody had to, be daring or just really wanting to put some things out there. And sometimes, like in my learning journey, I kind of wish I would be able to say more things, but it just doesn't exist yet, to express some of these ideas. So I'm just kind of hoping to maybe see like where some of this would be able to take me in the future. And I'm kind of interested to see what other people who have understandings like in different aspects of their lives, like for Benny for computer programming, or even somebody who knows like jujitsu martial arts, or somebody who knows how to take care of a garden, like, of citrus fruits. It's just kind of, well, like, we're not doing the same things that we did back in the day. We're not all, planting coconuts and having like traditional herbs. We've migrated to so many different parts of the world that, we're all very unique and we have our own different backgrounds and ways of understanding things. And for me, that's just kind of, I guess, just like a personal challenge to see like how far I'd be able to go. And I just want to see like how far other people are able to go to. And I want to hear what they have to think about things that are very dear to them.
Oh, seduce Masi, Alex. Seduce Masi. I really like that idea. You know, I really like that idea of using, you know, unused old or unique words in to talk about very new and different things. Right? I like that idea. So, because there's the words that there's the words that we use every day, to say hi to your cousin, to say hi to your auntie, to talk drama about so and so, to go to church and say hi to the priest if you're Catholic, right? These are the chore words you're going to use all the time. But then your words that you're talking about are the words that like you don't use very often or you may never use, right? Because even sometimes I hear when I'm talking to people, they'll use a word and I'll be like, oh man, like I haven't heard that word in like 20 years, and so, or sometimes because, as a second language learner of Chamorro, I've read through the dictionary, and I know words that I've never said out loud. I've typed it, and I've never heard anyone say it to me before, but I've used it when I'm writing. And so it's cool when I hear somebody use it. And so but I really like that idea, like that, especially when you're thinking about like Pokemon, as thinking about the different types of attacks that they can do, the different moves and so on. I can see why there'd be a lot of possibilities there for taking all of the words in the Chamorro language, including those that we may not use very often nowadays. Because as if any of you ever spend a lot of time looking through the Chamorro dictionary, there's lots of words for hitting things, lots of words, and like there's a specialized lexicon for like hitting things, depending on how you're hitting something, how hard you're hitting it, where you're hitting it. And then there's like Spanish words that Chamorro's incorporated, and then there's Austronesian words that were there before colonization. And so it's always like this interesting sort of thing. Like, is it an open fist? Is it hard? Is it a closed fist? Is it a karate chop? Is it a punch? Is it an uppercut? And so that's why anyways, I always like to see what you're doing in that regard. We're coming close to sort of the end of our hour, but I wanted to give but Delma, I wanted to give you another chance though to kind of talk. I was really struck, especially when Senora Rose was encouraging you, especially you said that as your mother has passed away, but your father is still with you. You said that he's a war survivor. About how old would you say your father is?
Right now, or what, during the war?
Or yeah, or now.
He's 83 and he was just the baby, not even 1 years old when he was where he had his experience. His grandmother took care of him and his brother. There's only the two of them, and they have his stories in the books, his stories on social media. I mean, on YouTube, where he did an interview. My mom didn't want to sit next to him, so she's like, "Go be with your dad." So I pretty much, my dad, he has dementia now.
Hmm.
He's his time with that I was being the one to help him get around and places. So I was taking him, first it was just him and my mom. And after his dementia started getting worse, I was taking him to his war survivor events.
Hmm.
And the most recent one and the last one that he attended was he was trying to find his parents' name and his brother's, including his grandmother, on the wall down at, I believe they brought the wall to the senators' legislature where they had an event there. And I had to help him look for his name. And from there, that's his age now. He's 83, and it happened when he was a baby.
Oh wow. Hadzinanya, what is his name? What's your dad's name?
Francisco Paris Sablan.
Okay. Oh wow. I'm glad that you're there to help him, um, and support him, and also I'm glad that you've taken an interest in, carrying on your parents' stories.
Oh,
Because
yes.
that's yeah, no, it's important. It's important because
Mhm.
in my work doing oral history, I find so many of our manamku. Because even just last week I went to a community center, where there's just elders where, who filled with stories and families that don't care, don't want to listen to them anymore. And so whenever I hear that there's somebody who's interested in remembering their stories, telling them, passing them on, it always, Nina Bule Corazon, it makes me happy. And so Sidus Masin.
You're welcome. And I have to it's very, I want to share with everyone is that, our parents are our parents, and then we are our children's parents. If, whoever that are parents, um feeling the loss of either a child or a parent. Grief is grief, but everybody goes through it a different way. But once our parents are gone and we end up wanting to have the stories or share the language, or it doesn't whatever it may be, once they're gone, like now I miss my mom's storytelling. I miss them telling me stories like constantly. It's that storytelling that the Chamorros have so much of that I don't hear it a lot. I may not be out in the community a lot, but when I was out in the community a lot, it's the Chamorro stories are not being told as often and as frequent as how I used to hear it from my dad or my mom. So it is important, is what I feel.
No, Sidus Masi. Sidus Masi. And so, Benny, I want to give you the last word. Ultimo na na senangan Gwini. And so thank you for gathering these voices and these writers here for Sakman. But yeah, with sort of the time that we have left, share any final message you have about
Yeah.
Sakman, or why Sakman is important, why the language is important. Hago lamon.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you everyone for sharing your stories. Yeah, please, everyone listening out there, if you're in your Chamorro language journey, please come and visit Sakman. It's an immersive experience. Come and enjoy all the content and stories. When you're ready, let us know and we'll gladly post your story for everyone else to read. It's for us. If we're not the one that's going to do this, who else? And then to encourage for Match Tomorrow, we're going to have a weekly drawing. So a weekly raffle. So every post that you put up, that would be like a raffle ticket. And then we'll have some prizes once a week to kind of encourage content. And I hope we see everyone there on asakman.com. Thank you.
Biba. All right, si Zeus Masinu Hamzu Toros ni Mangagagi Gwinigi Holami Zumza si Zeus Masinu Hamzu Toros ni Umeega Parume Ekungu Kesti Finakpo Estina episode Finatsu Ajos Esta Kimana Li Hitalo Esta.